Hey Navigators, welcome to St. Augustine. Behind me is the beautiful Flagler College. This is an incredible historic city, and we're going to hit the road and check it out. Today, I'm riding my Navi in St. Johns County through the oldest city in the U.S., St. Augustine. Founded more than 40 years before Jamestown, it's been shaped by Spanish conquistadors, British colonizers, runaway slaves, Gilded Age millionaires, and civil rights warriors. And this town still has centuries of secrets buried beneath its cobblestone roads. Hey Navigators, it is early. It's about 3:30 in the morning. Today I'm going on the farthest Navi ride I've ever been on, at least the farthest to get to it. I'm going to St. Augustine, which is 4 hours away, driving, and then 4 hours back. But it should be a good ride. So let's hit the road. The sun's about to rise. Thankfully, it's about 6:30 in the morning. I am so tired right now. It's crazy. I'm not showing you me because it's too dark and you can't see me, but at least the sun is starting to rise, which means that it'll be easier to drive. Good morning, everybody. I am about 45 minutes away from St. Augustine. I have been driving for 3 hours. I'm glad the sun has started to come out because I was getting really tired. I was getting really tired right before the sun came out. So good timing. I'm getting there as early as I can, because St. Augustine has really thin roads. They're old roads in the older part of town. I mean, literally hundreds of years old. So this is a big truck, and I got my bike on the back of it. And so I through Google, like maps, I think I found a good place to park. And so I need to get there really early because my daughter was in St. Augustine about a month ago, and she said at about 10 in the morning, everything starts to liven up. That's when all the shops open and things like that. So you want to get a parking spot on the street. If you're going to get it on the street, you want to get that as early as possible. So I'm trying to get there as close to sunrise as possible. I think sunrise is in about 15 minutes. So I'll be about a half hour late from that, but I think that'll still be plenty of time. I should arrive around 7:30 in the morning. So that should be good. One of the challenges, I mean, they have like really good parking garages there, but I don't know, maybe if you guys know, you could tell me, but if I park in a parking garage with my motorcycle, my little mini moto here, and then I go out of the parking lot and I go back in, do I have to pay again for the parking of the motorcycle? You know what I mean? Are they going to double dip me on that? I'm hoping I can find a nice spot on one of the roads, a bigger parking spot that's at the end, so I don't have to worry about getting my bike back on, and I won't have to worry about a car parking really close to my truck. So we'll see what happens, but that's the plan. Hey Navigators, I am so excited to be on this ride with you today. St. Augustine has been on my ride list since the very beginning, and I can't wait to see the sights. And the first one is right in front of us. It's called the Bridge of Lions. Now, the Bridge of Lions was conceived by Henry Rodenbaugh and it was designed on purpose to cost 10 times more than comparable bridges of its era. The elegant double-leaf bascule bridge opened in 1927, and it instantly became known as the most beautiful bridge in Dixie. Now what's cool is that the top of this bridge actually opens up, it lifts up, it's a drawbridge, and allows these big sailboats with long masts to go through. Now, standing guard at its western entrance are two majestic Carrara marble lions called Faithful
and firm. In 2015, to mark the city's 450th anniversary, the Lyon family grew when residents Wolfgang and Miku Shaw donated 2 granite companions called Peace and Happiness. All right, here on our right is the fort. Rising from the western shore of Menendez Bay, the Castillo de San Marcos is not merely the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States. It's a fortress that literally swallowed cannonballs whole. Built from coquina, a remarkable sedimentary rock made of ancient bonded shells quarried from nearby Anastasia Island, the Castillo's walls absorbed enemy fire rather than shattering when it was hit, making it virtually impenetrable to the weapons of its era. Ordered by Governor Francisco de la Guerra de la Vega, after English privateer Robert Cyril burned St. Augustine to the ground in 1668, the fort was designed by Spanish engineer Ignacio Daza. Now, construction began in 1672 and was completed in 1695. That's a long time. But the fort immediately proved its worth. British forces besieged it twice. First, under Carolina Governor James Moore in 1702, and again under Georgia Governor James Oglethorpe in 1740. And both times they sailed away defeated. The fort changed hands 5 times across 4 governments: Spain, Britain, the United States, and briefly the Confederacy. Yet it was never once taken by force, earning its place as one of the most strategically successful fortifications in American history. All right, so here on the left are the city gates. And what's interesting is that for most of St. Augustine's history, the city leaders worried chiefly about invasion from the sea, and that's why the fort was built. After a 20-year British occupation, a new and unfamiliar threat had emerged on the horizon: the young and rapidly expanding United States, whose military forces could theoretically march overland from Georgia and attack by land rather than by sea. So in response to this, the Spanish reinforced the city's northern defenses by rebuilding the old Cubo line, a formidable system of heavy walls, and in 1808 crowned it with the city gate. Now, this building in front of us was built in 1887 and was originally Spessiger's drugstore, but in 1949, George L. Potter turned it into a wax museum. I want to go through some of the early St. Augustine history. This place is so old, it's really hard to kind of capture everything that's important for you guys because it's just so much. It's over 450 years of history. So I'll do my best. Now, long before the United States existed, a Spanish explorer set foot on an unknown coastline and changed the course of history. In 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon, governor of Puerto Rico, and a seasoned Spanish conquistador, became the first European to explore Florida's coastline, claiming the vast peninsula for Spain and naming it La Florida in honor of the springtime Spanish Feast of the Flowers. But La Florida was no mere peninsula. It encompassed the entire southeastern United States, stretching as far west to take up part of present-day Texas, representing one of the most sweeping territorial claims in the New World. For decades after Ponce de Leon's arrival, both Spain and France scrambled to plant a permanent foothold in this vast territory, and they both repeatedly failed. The French made their most serious attempt in 1562, when Huguenot Captain Jean Ribault began exploring the region, followed in 1564 by his former lieutenant René Goulin de Laudonnière, who established Fort Caroline near the St. Johns River and made contact with the local Timucua people. Soon after, though, things went bad when mutineers from Fort Caroline attacked Spanish vessels in the Caribbean. King Philip II of Spain seized on the provocation, dispatching his most capable admiral, Pedro Menendez de Abeles, and he sent him to destroy the French settlement and establish a Spanish base of operations once and for all. Now, Menendez arrived with purpose and speed, and on September 8th, 1565, he and his settlers gathered on the shores of Florida for a remarkable moment that echoed far beyond its time. Father Francisco Lopez de Mendoza Grajales celebrated a Mass of Thanksgiving, the first Catholic Mass in what is now the continental United States. And with that sacred ceremony, the city of St. Augustine was born. It would go on to become the oldest continuously occupied settlement of European origin in the continental United States, predating the English colony of Jamestown by 42 years and Plymouth Rock by 55. Alright, you know what time it is? It is time to feed Algo the algorithm. Now, if you are a recent visitor to this channel, you know what I've said before, so I'll keep it short. The popularity and visibility of videos is based on algorithms, and algorithms make those decisions based on the things that you do when you watch this video. So the more you interact, or the more you watch more than one video while you're online here, or the longer you watch any video, all those things help. It basically tells the algorithm, oh, this is interesting. We should share this with other people that like history or motorcycles or mini motos or Honda Navis or St. Augustine or anything like that. So if you press things or say things or write a comment or whatever, all of that helps. And in a world with AI and AI content, it's really, really difficult to rise above the noise. So anything you could do to help a little old channel with little old me riding my little mini moto through real cities and researching their real history so I can share them with you, well, anything you could do would be greatly appreciated. You don't have to. I won't be offended if you don't do anything, but it would certainly help. And for that, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're going to head into what's called the St. Augustine Town Plan Historic District. And this is the old part of town. It has super thin roads from the time and all these old buildings, which are shops and bed and breakfasts and things like that. And I got to tell you, it was really hard for me to figure out how to ride through this thing in a way that you guys could, I don't know, keep track of where you were. Because it was full of like these one-way streets. There was no like simple path that I could take that would make sense. It was like, now I would take a left. Oh wait, I can't. It's one way. Now I have to take a right, and then I have to go back to where I was, and then I have to go back around to where I was again, and then try to find a different way down a different road. Anyway, it's kind of a mess. But what I did is I tried to edit it together in a way that maybe you can't follow exactly where I'm going one place to the next, but you can certainly get a complete understanding of the location and its cool factor. Now, my daughter warned me, who had visited there recently, and she was right, that this whole part of town, it opens up at 10 a.m. So I needed to get on my Navi and go through these roads where most people would be walking in a short period of time and get my ride in for you guys so you can check it out virtually from the back of my Navi. Now, historically, this place is really, really cool. This area is the oldest example of a European planned community in the continental United States. This is a living grid of history that has been continuously inhabited since 1565. Now, what's so unique about this is that the street plan is laid out this way because it had to be in accordance with Spain's 1573 laws of the Indies, which mandated that colonial towns built on a precise gridiron radiating from a central plaza. The design placed the most important civic and religious buildings at the community's heart facing the sea, and many of those still exist. By the end of the colonial period, this is hundreds of years later, the city had roughly 300 houses, of which only about 30 still stand today, and nearly all of them were built of native coquina stone. But aren't these roads cool? I mean, we are so much bigger as people, and our automobiles and transportation has, expanded accordingly. So it's fascinating to me to see the differences between what it was like to live hundreds of years ago when you just had a horse, maybe just walked, maybe a cart of some sort, versus now where, riding a Navi, maybe two is all you'd get down this road. So to ride down these streets, it's such a refreshing, look back at a world that used to exist, and we're so lucky to be able to experience any of that today. It's just fascinating. Okay, here are some stats for you about St. Augustine. St. Augustine is about 13 square miles. Now, whenever you have a coastal town, some of that square mileage is actually in the water. So I think it's about 9 or 10 square miles of land, and the rest is water. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, it has a population of about 16,000 people, and they live in about 6,200 residences. Now, the median home value is about $560,000. Yeah, that's quite a bit. And the average rent is about $2,300 a month. Now, as far as education goes, the people who live here, 95% are high school grads, 13% are attending college, and 44% have graduated college. Now, the income per capita is about $46,000, which is slightly over the national average. And the median household income is about $80,000, which is also slightly over the national average. So, it's about the national average. Unfortunately, 13% live below poverty. Now, as far as age, 9% live under 18, 16% live between 18 and 24, 12% live between 25 and 34, 22% live between 35 and 54, 16% live between 55 and 64, and 26% are over 65. So that's actually a really good distribution. I mean, leans a little heavier from 35 to over 65, but still, that's pretty good, pretty even distribution of age range. When it comes to race, 83% of the population is white, 8% is Hispanic, 4% is black, another 4% are two or more races, and 2% are Asian. All right, so now we're going to take a ride around Flagler College. Flagler College is named after Henry Morrison Flagler. And, he was not a man to do things halfway. He was born in 1830 in Hopewell, New York, and he was the son of a Presbyterian minister. Now, he left school after 8th grade and went to work at the age of 14 for $5 a month. He eventually crossed paths with a young commission agent named John D. Rockefeller. And together, the two men built one of the most powerful and controversial business empires in American history. Their partnership, forged in Cleveland's booming oil refining industry in the late 1860s, grew into Standard Oil, which by 1892 controlled over 90% of oil refining in the United States, and it single-handedly reshaped the entire American economy. And Flagler, now fabulously wealthy, turned his restless gaze toward a sun-drenched wilderness at the edge of the American continent, Florida. Visiting St. Augustine with his second wife in the early 1880s, Flagler fell in love with Florida's warmth and beauty, but was appalled by its primitive hotels and transportation. So, he simply decided to build better ones. I guess if you can, you do. In 1885, he broke ground on the Hotel Ponce de Leon, enlisting two young architects fresh out of college named John Carrera and Thomas Hastings, who would later, by the way, go on to design the New York Public Library and the U.S. Capitol's House and Senate office buildings. Yeah, so they were pretty good. Anyway, Flagler wanted them to create something the American South had never seen. On January 10th, 1888, the Ponce de Leon opened, and it's a breathtaking masterpiece of Spanish Renaissance architecture and the first major poured-in-place concrete building in the United States. The coquina shell concrete walls rising around the interiors were illuminated by 4,000 electric lights installed by Thomas Edison's own Edison Electric Company, making it one of the nation's first electrified buildings. Louis Comfort Tiffany designed the interior, contributing magnificently stained glass and intricate mosaics, while at the same time, muralist George Willoughby Maynard and Virgilio Tietti adorned the ceilings with grand paintings that gave the hotel an artistic grandeur rarely seen outside of Europe. The hotel became an instant sensation, drawing U.S. presidents, captains of industry, and the cream of Gilded Age society to what Flagler envisioned as a new American Riviera. Now, when the hotel closed in the mid-1920s, that's when the whole housing crash occurred in Florida, rather than let its irreplaceable building decay, a new chapter began in 1968 when Flagler College opened, preserving one of America's most remarkable structures as a living, working liberal arts campus. It's hard to pick a favorite location in a town like St. Augustine, but I gotta say, one of them is this neighborhood called Lincolnville. It's a 50-block neighborhood that was born in 1866 when newly freed men and women leased the land for $1 a year. The community quickly grew into a tight-knit neighborhood of narrow streets, churches, schools, and black-owned businesses, its residents building new lives in the shadow of Reconstruction and, unfortunately, the rise of Jim Crow. When Henry Flagler started to build his hotel, he relied greatly on the labor that came from this neighborhood. Lincolnville is on the National Register of Historic Places. It has 548 buildings contributing to that honor. Now, as you ride through, I was fascinated because these are really authentic homes that have been lived in all this time, right? They haven't been gentrified. They haven't been gutted and refurbished. These are homes that have been lived in. And I think that's awesome, because this neighborhood had to endure waves of demolition and pressure to redevelop, tear these things down and turn it into something else. And I'm so happy that it has survived as is in a city with so much truly authentic history and truly authentic historic buildings. The fact that you have a whole neighborhood of these worn, loved, lived in, awesome, beautiful homes is just great. This was one of my favorite parts of the ride, honestly. All right, now I took this ride down here because of the National Cemetery. It's about 1.5 acres of land where nearly 3 centuries of American military history lies beneath the soil. The grounds were consecrated as a military burial place. The first interment took place in 1828, and the cemetery's most arresting features are 3 coquina pyramids erected in 1842, known as the Dade Monument, which honored Major Francis L. Dade, beneath which lie the remains of more than 1,400 soldiers who perished during the brutal Seminole Wars. Many were originally buried in Seminole-controlled territory before being transferred here after the fighting ended. Among the most haunting chapters in the cemetery story is the Dade Massacre of 1835, which we cover in the Dade City episode, which you can learn more about when you take that ride with me. So check that video out. This cemetery was elevated to a national cemetery status in 1881, and it was done by general order issued by none other than Commanding General William Tecumseh Sherman. So this cemetery has soldiers from the Seminole Wars, the Civil Wars, the Spanish-American War, resting side by side. That's really, really awesome. Now, before we go, I wanted to take a quick look at St. Augustine Beach. And as I was riding down there, 2 things occurred to me. One is that this part of St. Augustine is it's actually St. Augustine Beach, which I think may be its own little city. But what's so interesting to me is that this area is just old school Florida. And the way you can tell, at least the way I define old school Florida, is that it's mostly original buildings built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And none of it's been redeveloped into major high-rises. So it's this old school Florida. And as I was riding, I noticed on the left this lighthouse. And I was like, all right, well, how do I get to this lighthouse? So I took a left and I went down a road, and it was the wrong road. Even though I could see the lighthouse, there was no road directly to it. It was really frustrating. So I eventually ran into a police officer who told me how to get there, and then I went there. And as I'm going there, I'm going to tell you the history of this lighthouse because it's pretty dang cool. Long before the current lighthouse illuminated the Florida sky, St. Augustine's coastline was already being watched over, because this was no ordinary port at the time. Following Ponce de Leon's discovery of the Gulf Stream, St. Augustine became one of the most strategically vital harbors in the New World. I had no idea about this. So the Spanish responded by erecting a wooden watchtower in the late 1500s to guard their settlement from seafaring invaders and also to guide traders to their port. Now, on top of this structure, a flame burned, and it was really kind of too faint to do much more than keep the watchman company. And eventually, that didn't work out too well because in 1586, Sir Francis Drake rendered even that moot when he burned that structure to the ground. He did this during his raid of the city. Now, rising from the ruins, a coquina tower was constructed in 1683 from the remnants of a stone chapel, and this second lighthouse stood faithfully for nearly 200 years. Isn't that crazy? But erosion finally claimed it, sending it tumbling into the sea in 1880. But fortunately, engineers at the time could see that coming, so the current lighthouse, St. Augustine's oldest surviving brick structure, was built further inland to avoid that erosion, and it was built in 1874. 6 years before the old one fell apart. Now, another thing that makes me think of St. Augustine as old school Florida is that it's not easy to go to the tourist places, this attraction. Like this lighthouse, you go and you can't even see it from the parking lot because of all the overhung trees and stuff. I mean, it looks cool, but you know, if this were in like Clearwater or somewhere like that, they would have cleared it out. It would be easy to see. It just, I don't know. That's not a complaint though. I like the old school Florida, but it's just so surprising to see the difference. Now, at the top of this lighthouse originally was a Fresnel lens. It was 12 feet tall and 6 feet across, and it composed of 370 hand-cut prisms arranged in a beehive formation. And it's still there. And it's been casting its light across the water since the day it was first installed. Now, over the years, it had some trouble, like a lot of buildings in Florida. Following World War II, it fell into disrepair. In 1970, there was a fire that basically destroyed the 1876 Keeper's House. That was a Victorian duplex that sheltered the families who actually took care of the light. And during the years, it also had neglect and vandalism, but fortunately, in 1980, there was a campaign to restore it. It took 14 years and $1.2 million to restore that lighthouse, and it opened to the public in 1988. All right, so now that we've checked out the lighthouse, there's one more thing I wanted to do. I wanted to check out St. Augustine's Beach. Now, the thing that always kind of frustrates me about going to these beaches is that because I have my Navi and it's got all this camera equipment hooked up to it that honestly is not hard to take off, I never feel comfortable leaving my Navi by itself and going all the way down to the shore. I wish I could have this time because St. Augustine is on the Atlantic Ocean side of Florida. The waves are usually bigger, the currents are stronger, so I'll find out what I can actually see, but I gotta figure out a different way to do these beach things because I'd like to walk down and get closer to the water for you guys. The laws with drones is really getting harder to do. Most communities now are banning drones, especially on public beaches, because you're not allowed legally to fly a drone over people unless they give you approval or unless you have some sort of agreement from the owners of the property. But a public beach is owned by the city. So it's just not as easy as it used to be or as it could be. So it's just not as easy to get the shots that I want to get for you. And I'm going to have to figure something out.
Well, Navi-Gators, that was an awesome ride. I'm right now at a gas station because I had to get out of there because they were going to start charging me to park at 10 a.m. So I was rushing to get out of there before I get a ticket. So great ride, St. Augustine. Really interesting. It's the older part, the historic part, just really thin roads, and there were so many one-way like streets. It got really confusing about how to ride it in a way that you guys could follow. It was really, really difficult. And then, the ride out to the beach as well. It's just old Florida, and that's not a bad thing. But there's some places that have been really well gentrified, and then there are others that are just old Florida. Even the older homes in Lincolnville, I think it's called, that neighborhood, needed work too. They look like they had been out and exposed to the Florida elements for a long time, and they have. But it's such a great historic site, for America and for Florida. So I was really happy to be able to take the ride, and I'm glad that you guys get to join me on it.
Oh man, St. Augustine. I have never been on my Navi to a town that's as old as St. Augustine. I mean, honestly, there isn't a European settled town older than St. Augustine in the continental U.S. But it's just so hard to kind of express all the history as you're riding, I try to balance how much I'm talking versus just giving you time also just to enjoy the ride without me yapping all the time. So I try to get it right, but, who knows. But I have really enjoyed this ride because not only the history, but the environment is so different, You have old Florida, you have historic, really cool 1920s bridge. You have normal roads, and then you have these amazing things like the fort, and then these historic roads, and this amazing college that was once this stunning hotel. It's so cool. Anyway, so listen, thank you so much for joining me on the road today. As always, I think time is literally the most precious treasure we have. So the fact that you have invested any of that time with me, it just honestly means the world to me. Thank you so much. And remember, because time is precious, you want to have as much of it as you can. So when you're on the road, be safe, be kind, and be generous to those around you. Let them get in front of you, even if it frustrates you. Just be safe out there. Because at the end of the day, I want that ride to be fun. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you guys next time.